In the early 1900s, one young prince stood at the fault line of Balkan history. Mirko Petrovic-Njegos, second son of Montenegro's ruling house, married into Serbia's Obrenović line, brushed the edge of a crown, and watched his private world collapse in a single year. Tonight we follow Mirko's brief, intense life, the marriages and pacts, the Black Hand shadows, the two tiny coffins in 1908, and a lonely end in Vienna. This is not a legend. It is the cost of ambition in a small country squeezed by empires. Prince Mirko Dmitri Petrovic-Njegos, 1879 to 1918, stood where family ambition met Balkan geopolitics, and where public victories could not shield private loss. It's a tale that reminds us how even the mightiest thrones can't shield the heart from breaking. To understand Mirko fully, we must explore the broader historical forces at play. Montenegro, under Nicholas I, was navigating a precarious independence, having gained recognition as a sovereign state in 1878 at the Congress of Berlin. This era was marked by constant threats from larger powers, including the Ottoman Empire's waning influence and the Austro-Hungarian Empire's expansionist ambitions. Nicholas's court was a hub of diplomatic maneuvering, where alliances were forged through marriages and secret pacts, reflecting the fragile balance of power in the Balkans. Mirko's birth into this dynasty positioned him not just as a prince, but as a potential pawn in his father's grand vision of South Slavic unity, a dream that would shape his entire existence. Early life and childhood, 1879 to 1900. As the second son in the royal family, Mirko Petrovic-Njegos spent his early years somewhat overshadowed by his elder brother, Crown Prince Danilo. Yet he never truly receded into obscurity. From a young age, he emerged as the family's undeniable charmer, possessing a playful glint in his eye that could soften even the strictest demeanor of his father, Prince Nicholas. Vintage photographs from around 1900 capture this essence vividly. One shows him confidently shaking hands with his Swiss tutor, Charles Piguet, as if they were lifelong companions, while another depicts him in contemplative poses that reveal a childhood marked by both privilege and careful structure. Life at the royal court in Cetinje felt remarkably close-knit, almost like an extended family gathering. Servants and nobles alike showered attention on the young princes, guiding them through essential skills such as expert horsemanship, mastering multiple languages, and navigating the subtle intricacies of diplomacy. However, this idyllic surface concealed underlying strains. Montenegro, a diminutive principality, found itself precariously wedged between the formidable Austro-Hungarian Empire to the north and the waning Ottoman influence to the south. Nicholas's court hummed with the constant buzz of strategic alliances and bitter rivalries, particularly with neighboring Serbia, where ongoing dynastic clashes between the Obrenović and Karađorđević families threatened to destabilize the region's power dynamics. Mirko's formative years were immersed in this charged environment, a relatable mix of youthful escapades and the inescapable pull of fate, akin to growing up in a high-stakes family enterprise, but with thrones and treaties replacing ordinary ledgers and accounts. Beyond court etiquette, his education mixed classical tutoring with the hard edges of Montenegrin life. He was raised within the walls of the Biljarda Palace in Cetinje, where his learning followed a classical European model. This included fluency in French, German, and Russian, complemented by deep dives into Montenegrin history and Orthodox Christian theology. His tutor, Charles Piguet, was specifically brought in to enforce discipline and broaden his global perspective, equipping him for future diplomatic endeavors. Family life added another layer of complexity. Surrounded by 8 siblings, the household brimmed with energy and interactions. But as the second son, Mirko was positioned as a potential spare heir. This role cultivated a blend of ambition and restraint, subtly fueling a psychological urge to distinguish himself, a trait that later manifested in his charismatic boldness and unflinching confidence. The political turbulence of the time left an indelible mark. Young Mirko observed firsthand the border conflicts with the Ottomans and his father's triumphant military efforts that enlarged Montenegro's borders. These events forged his outlook, instilling a passionate nationalism and an idealized notion of heroism, inspired by the epic Montenegrin poetry that his family held in high regard. Amid the opulence, though, glimpses of fragility emerged. Historical accounts portray Mirko as inherently sensitive, frequently seeking refuge in the solitude of the mountains. This retreat hinted at a profound internal struggle, torn between the demands of royal duty and his own unspoken personal yearnings, a tension that would echo throughout his adult life, adding depth to his enigmatic persona. Marriage and political aspirations, 1902 to 1903. Mirko's journey truly began to unfold in his early 20s, when love and politics intertwined in a way that would define his legacy. In 1902, at the age of 23, he met Natalia Konstantinovich, a striking young woman from Trieste, born on October 10, 1882, into a family with deep Serbian roots. Natalia's grandmother was Princess Anka Obrenović, forging a direct link to Serbia's ruling dynasty, a tie that King Nicholas astutely recognized as a golden opportunity. Mirko, utterly captivated by her sharp intelligence and radiant beauty, pursued her with the fiery passion of a romantic hero straight from his father's epic poems, pouring his heart into every gesture and word. Their wedding on July 25, 1902, in Cetinje became a spectacular event, weaving together time-honored Montenegrin customs with subtle signals of expansive Balkan ambitions, drawing crowds and creating a buzz that echoed across the region. But this wasn't merely a fairy tale romance. Politics infused every vow and promise. Serbia's King Alexander I and Queen Draga were childless, igniting fears over succession and instability. A shrewd agreement emerged. If no heirs materialized, Mirko, bolstered by Natalia's Obrenović heritage, would ascend as Crown Prince of Serbia. This prospect was electrifying, casting Mirko as the pivotal connector between Montenegro and Serbia, advancing Nicholas's bold vision of a unified Slavic powerhouse that could reshape alliances and borders. Politically, the marriage achieved 3 aims. It tied Mirko to the Obrenović line, reassured Nicholas's regional ambitions, and unsettled the Karađorđević camp. Natalia, shaped by her education in Trieste under Austro-Hungarian sway, infused the Montenegrin court with not just royal pedigree but a refined international flair that broadened its horizons. Their courtship spanned months, filled with trips to elegant spots like Nice, where Mirko's surviving letters expose layers of true devotion amid calculated moves to secure familial and national gains. The ceremony at Cetinje's Vlaška Church hosted European elites, underscoring Nicholas's push for regional supremacy through spectacle and symbolism. Politically, the Serbian pact exploited Alexander's scandalous marriage to commoner Draga, whose infertility opened doors for Nicholas's expansionism. Mirko's potential throne claim could have merged the two nations under Petrovic-Njegos leadership, potentially averting or accelerating Balkan conflicts. Yet it bred dangers, stoking enmity from the Karađorđević clan and other foes, wary of this power grab. Psychologically, Mirko navigated a whirlwind of joy and burden, his union fueling personal bliss while imposing duty's heavy chains, priming him for lifelong clashes between emotion and obligation. Early married life brimmed with promise as they adapted to palace routines, but political undercurrents soon stirred, hinting at brewing storms. Family life and early joys, 1903 to 1907. The early years of marriage ushered in a wave of joy and family growth for Mirko and Natalia. On August 27, 1903, their first son, Prince Stefan, affectionately known as Szczepak, was born in Cetinje, his arrival echoing through the palace with the vibrant energy of new beginnings. Mirko poured his affection into the child, often cradling him and dreaming aloud of a legacy where his son could one day claim royal thrones across the Balkans. Just 2 years later, on January 30th, 1905, Prince Stanislaw entered the world, adding another layer of promise and strengthening the family's bond. For a time, everything glittered with possibility. Mirko thrived on diplomatic excursions throughout Europe, where his natural charisma shone at lavish court balls, forging crucial connections with influential figures. Back home, the couple cherished serene escapes to Podgorica or Cetinje, stepping away from the relentless spotlight of royal obligations to savor simple family moments. Yet, as any gripping historical tale reveals, the Balkans' unpredictable fate was already scripting a darker turn. This period combined domestic calm with active public duty. Mirko was a present father at home and a useful envoy abroad. Stefan's birth cemented Mirko's identity as a devoted patriarch. Records from the era paint him as deeply engaged, personally overseeing his son's early upbringing and introducing age-old Montenegrin customs like gentle lessons in horsemanship to build resilience and cultural pride from toddlerhood. With Stanislaw's addition, the household buzzed with even more vitality, thriving against the backdrop of Montenegro's economic upswing, which included advancements in education and trade. Mirko frequently joined his father on key diplomatic ventures to powerhouses like Russia and Italy, where he skillfully deployed his magnetic personality to negotiate alliances and secure vital funds for modernizing projects, such as upgrading Cetinje's roads and public facilities to elevate the nation's status. These professional triumphs were balanced by private retreats to Podgorica, where Mirko relished pursuits like hunting expeditions and recounting tales inspired by the profound poetic heritage of his great-uncle, Petar II Petrovic-Njegos, fostering a sense of continuity in his children. However, cracks were forming beneath the surface. Natalia, still adjusting to the rugged Montenegrin lifestyle after her Trieste upbringing, confided in correspondence about bouts of homesickness, underscoring subtle cultural frictions that tested their union. On the political front, the brutal 1903 assassination of Serbia's King Alexander and Queen Draga shattered Mirko's long-held aspirations for the Serbian crown, paving the way for Peter III Karađorđevic's rise and realigning regional loyalties against Montenegro's favor. This profound setback left Mirko grappling with a void of unrealized ambitions, channeling more energy into his family role while quietly nurturing an undercurrent of dissatisfaction, a brewing restlessness that hinted at the trials ahead. Tragedies and Losses, 1908. Tragedy descended upon Mirko's family in 1908 with the force of a relentless mountain blizzard, shattering their world in ways that echoed through generations. It began with the heartbreaking loss of young Prince Stanislaw, who was only 3 years old when he succumbed to illness on January 4th in Kotor. The pain cut deep, leaving Mirko, a devoted father, reeling from the raw agony of burying his child, his dreams for the boy's future crumbling like fragile snow. Clinging to Natalia for solace, the couple faced an even greater blow just 2 months later, on March 15th, when their firstborn, Prince Stefan, passed away at the tender age of 4 in Cannes. The family had relocated there seeking the milder climate and advanced medical care to aid his fragile health. But it was all in vain. The consecutive deaths of both sons within such a short span created an abyss of grief, transforming lively palace nurseries into hauntingly silent spaces filled with unspoken memories. Yet, in the midst of this darkness, a fragile spark of hope emerged with the birth of their third son, Prince Michael, on September 14, 1908, in Podgorica. Mirko cradled the newborn with fierce protectiveness, murmuring fervent prayers as if to shield him from the same merciless fate that had claimed his brothers, determined to nurture this new life against all odds. Medical realities of the era, before antibiotics, left even royal families exposed to infectious disease. The decision to travel to Cannes highlighted the family's privilege in pursuing European medical options, far superior to what was available in Montenegro's underdeveloped healthcare system. But it ultimately exposed the limitations of early 20th century medicine, where antibiotics and vaccines were still decades away. Mirko's mourning was intensely personal. Archival sources indicate he stepped back from official responsibilities for a period, immersing himself in introspection that questioned the cruel twists of destiny and the precariousness of his family's legacy. Natalia shared this devastation, pouring her energy into family unity, though the mutual sorrow bred subtle fractures, perhaps unspoken resentments over relocation choices, or perceived failures in safeguarding their children's health that tested the resilience of their marriage. Prince Michael's arrival provided a poignant counterpoint, embodying renewal and endurance, yet it unfolded against a backdrop of unresolved grief, forcing the couple to balance joy with lingering shadows. Psychologically, these back-to-back losses probably shifted Mirko's once vibrant optimism toward a more somber, fatalistic perspective, heightening his awareness of mortality and potentially driving him toward bolder, more hazardous pursuits in the years ahead. On a larger scale, the events laid bare the stark realities of Balkan society, where medical progress lagged behind Europe, reminding us that beneath the grandeur of royalty lay the same vulnerabilities that afflicted ordinary families, stripping away illusions of invincibility. Continuing family and personal involvement, 1908 to 1912. The family forged ahead through their grief, expanding once more with the birth of Prince Pavle on May 16, 1910, in Podgorica, followed by Prince Emmanuel on June 10, 1912, in Cetinje. Mirko immersed himself fully in the role of father, dedicating time to guide his sons through the rugged essence of Montenegrin life, leading them on horseback rides across fog-shrouded valleys, where the air carried whispers of ancient battles, and sharing gripping stories of legendary figures, like his great-uncle Petar II Petrovic-Njegos, the revered poet-prince whose lyrical works embodied the unyielding spirit and cultural depth of their homeland. These moments weren't just play, they were deliberate efforts to pass down a legacy of resilience and pride. However, the devastating losses of 1908 cast long shadows that refused to fade. Natalia, who had once radiated energy and warmth, increasingly retreated into a shell of subdued sorrow, her private correspondences to relatives revealing subtle undercurrents of a relationship frayed by unvoiced accusations and the heavy burden of mutual heartache. Mirko, clinging to his inherent optimism as a lifeline, turned outward for distraction, channeling his energies into larger pursuits that promised purpose beyond the personal void. With Pavle, 1910, and Emmanuel, 1912, the household tried to heal, while Mirko grew more protective and outward-facing. He meticulously planned excursions to sacred landmarks, such as the Ostrog Monastery, perched dramatically in the cliffs, where lessons on faith, history, and family intertwined with quality time, reinforcing bonds while educating the boys on their royal responsibilities. Yet the trauma's aftermath bred an overprotective streak in Mirko. He mandated regular health evaluations by trusted physicians, a clear sign of lingering anxiety over potential repeats of past heartbreaks, driven by the era's harsh medical realities. Natalia's growing isolation stemmed from a complex mix, perhaps compounded by the physical and emotional toll of repeated pregnancies, or the persistent echo of unresolved grief, which gradually widened an emotional chasm between them, manifesting in less frequent shared activities and more solitary reflections. Mirko's buoyant disposition propelled him into expanded public duties, such as consulting on Montenegro's military upgrades in anticipation of brewing regional tensions, positioning him as a key advisor to his father. This era also sparked Mirko's own creative explorations. Inspired by Petar II's literary influence, he experimented with poetry and prose as a private means to process his inner conflicts, though no writings endure today. Overall, the family's atmosphere shifted to one of determined endurance, masking simmering frictions that would eventually contribute to the erosion of their marriage, demonstrating how profound personal losses can insidiously undermine relationships, even among those bound by duty and shared history. Involvement in the Black Hand and Balkan Wars, 1911 to 1913. By 1911, at the age of 32, Mirko Petrovic-Njegos' path veered into darker, more clandestine territory, fueled by mounting frustrations over Austria-Hungary's bold annexation of Bosnia-Herzegovina in 1908, a move that struck at the heart of Slavic identity and autonomy. This outrage propelled him to align with the Black Hand, a shadowy secret society formerly dubbed Unity or Death, established by Serbian military officers with the explicit goal of consolidating all Serb-populated lands through a mix of covert operations, including espionage, widespread propaganda, and, when deemed necessary, targeted acts of violence. As a Prince of Montenegro, Mirko's decision to join was audacious and perilously impulsive, jeopardizing his nation's delicate position of neutrality amid the tense European power plays. He dove in headfirst, participating in secretive gatherings, channeling funds to support their initiatives, and leveraging his royal status to enhance the group's credibility and reach. What many overlook is how this connection linked him directly to key players like Dragutin Dimitrievich, better known as Apis, the organization's mastermind whose intricate schemes would later spark the fuse of World War I. For Mirko, the involvement carried profound personal weight. It was an opportunity to pay tribute to his Serbian heritage through his wife Natalia's lineage while advancing his father, King Nicholas's ambitious dreams of a broader pan-Slavic alliance. However, this choice inevitably bred scandal, branding him as a key figure in a tangled network of fervent nationalism that threatened to unravel the fragile peace across Europe. His move toward the Black Hand followed the 1908 annexation crisis and his dashed Serbian hopes. The 1908 annexation not only demeaned Slavic nations, but hit close to home for Mirko, given his marital links to Serbian royalty, framing it as a personal and cultural insult that demanded action. His contributions extended beyond mere financial support. He engaged in tactical coordination, such as orchestrating the covert transport of weapons and enlisting loyalists within Montenegro to bolster the society's network. This era overlapped with the explosive Balkan Wars of 1912 to 1913, during which Montenegro forged a strategic partnership with Serbia to challenge Ottoman forces, resulting in significant territorial gains that elevated Mirko's standing. He actively fought in frontline operations, receiving accolades for his demonstrated courage and leadership under fire. Yet the Black Hand's extreme tactics, encompassing planned assassinations and sabotage, posed serious moral quandaries. Mirko's participation likely stemmed from a quest for personal empowerment, following earlier dashed hopes like the lost Serbian succession, though it created rifts with more cautious elements in his own family circle. From a psychological standpoint, it provided a vital sense of direction during his ongoing domestic struggles, offering an escape from marital tensions. But the veil of secrecy also amplified dangers, fostering an environment ripe with suspicion and constant vigilance. While the Balkan Wars briefly fostered a sense of unity among allies, Mirko's deep entanglements hinted at impending larger-scale upheavals, underscoring nationalism's paradoxical nature as both a force for cohesion and a catalyst for widespread devastation. Marital strains and divorce, 1912 to 1917. As the 1910s progressed, personal turmoil in Mirko's life paralleled the escalating tensions leading to global conflict. The Balkan Wars of 1912 to 1913 brought territorial gains for Montenegro, including expansions into areas like Novi Pazar and parts of Albania, but Mirko's attention increasingly turned to his fracturing home life. The devastating deaths of son Stefan and Stanislaw in 1908 had irreparably damaged the core of his marriage. By 1912, shortly after Prince Emmanuel's birth, Natalia chose to leave, returning to her parents' home and effectively ending their union in practice, though not yet legally. Court insiders murmured about heated disputes rooted in lingering grief. Mirko's growing agitation and need for action colliding with Natalia's desire for emotional security and routine. This separation culminated in a formal divorce in October 1917, an extraordinary event for royalty, especially in conservative Orthodox societies, sparking widespread gossip and judgment. At 38 years old, Mirko relocated from the safety of Paris, where the Montenegrin royals had sought exile, to Vienna, the capital of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Montenegro's wartime adversary. Speculation abounds regarding this puzzling choice. Some attribute it to seeking specialized medical care for his worsening tuberculosis, which had begun sapping his strength. Others suggest covert diplomatic maneuvers or a growing disenchantment with the Allied powers, perhaps driven by frustration over Montenegro's diminishing role. Isolated in this hostile environment, Mirko spent his remaining time contemplating a trajectory filled with unfulfilled potential and profound personal setbacks. After 1912, distance, grief, and clandestine politics widened a rift that formalized in 1917. After 1912, Natalia's departure to Trieste marked a point of no return, worsened by Mirko's prolonged absences during the Balkan campaigns, where he served in military roles, and his involvement in underground networks, like the Black Hand, which demanded secrecy and added layers of stress. Rumors circulated in royal circles about possible infidelities on both sides, alongside fundamental differences in grieving styles. Mirko channeling sorrow into public and political engagements, while Natalia preferred inward reflection and family support networks. The Austrian invasion of Montenegro in 1916 displaced the royal family to France, but Mirko's earlier house arrest in Podgorica under occupying forces compounded his sense of detachment, leaving him cut off from loved ones and amplifying feelings of abandonment. The 1917 divorce, occurring amid the chaos of World War I, broke precedents for Orthodox nobility, necessitating special ecclesiastical approvals and igniting scandals that tarnished the Petrovic-Njegos reputation. Mirko's relocation to Vienna continues to puzzle historians. Documented health issues confirm progressive tuberculosis symptoms, including chronic cough and fatigue, prompting treatment at renowned clinics. Yet archival hints point to potential back-channel talks with Austrian officials about post-war arrangements for Montenegro, actions that could be seen as treacherous to Allied loyalties. This chapter exposes Mirko's profound inner struggles, where relentless ambition repeatedly clashed with cascading personal defeats, culminating in a period of enforced solitude that forced deep introspection on his choices, regrets, and the fragile nature of royal existence. Final years and death, 1917 to 1918. Mirko's untimely death on March 2nd, 1918 in Vienna, at the young age of 38, sent shockwaves that extended well beyond the confines of his hospital room, marking a poignant end to a life steeped in royal intrigue and personal turmoil. His body was laid to rest in Vienna's central cemetery, a stark contrast to the familiar grounds of Cetinje, where he had spent his formative years. This occurred against the backdrop of World War I's unrelenting turmoil, with Montenegro under foreign occupation and the entire Petrovic-Njegos family scattered in exile across Europe, highlighting the profound disruption that war inflicted on even the highest echelons of society. Tuberculosis, worsened by exile and stress, ended his life in Vienna in March 1918. Following his 1917 divorce from Natalia, Mirko's physical condition deteriorated swiftly while in Vienna, a city he had chosen for its advanced medical facilities, options that were simply not accessible in war-torn Montenegro or the exile havens in France. His solitude during this period was crushing. Separated from his surviving sons and extended family, he managed only intermittent letters that revealed deep-seated regrets about paths not taken and legacies left incomplete, such as his unfulfilled roles in diplomacy and nationalism. The decision to bury him in foreign soil poignantly encapsulated the splintering of the Montenegrin dynasty, with no efforts ever made to repatriate his remains, leaving a permanent symbol of loss and displacement. This premature passing, occurring before that of his father King Nicholas or his brother Crown Prince Danilo, vividly illustrated the unpredictable volatility of the time, where individual well-being became inextricably linked to the broader currents of geopolitical chaos, from occupations to shifting alliances. Personal anecdotes and emotional depth. Mirko's story transcended mere timelines and royal obligations, weaving in the profound elements of human emotion and vulnerability. In his youth, he earned a reputation as the palace's playful mischief maker. One notable incident involved him slyly replacing his father's ornate ceremonial sword with a simple wooden toy right before a formal state visit, resulting in a public reprimand but eliciting hidden amusement among the courtiers who witnessed the chaos. A loyal family servant later described him vividly, noting, "Mirko could charm the birds from the trees," a testament to his captivating warmth that often concealed underlying emotional depths and insecurities. His romance with Natalia ignited with intense passion during their early days. Surviving correspondence from their courtship details intimate moments like stolen kisses amid the blooming gardens of Nice, where he poured out his soul in words like, "You are the light in my mountainous shadow," blending heartfelt devotion with poetic eloquence. However, the tragic deaths of their children in 1908 shattered this foundation irrevocably. Accounts from witnesses in Cannes depict a gut-wrenching scene. Mirko hunched over Stefan's bedside, his face etched with anguish as tears flowed freely while he sang traditional Montenegrin lullabies, his voice faltering under the weight of overwhelming sorrow. In a moment of raw confession to a trusted aide, he lamented, "How can a father bury his sons?" exposing the intense private agony that pierced through his composed princely exterior. Natalia's perspective enriches this narrative with additional emotional complexity. While the marriage was orchestrated in part for strategic political gains, as she later reflected, in a passport application shared through her granddaughter, emphasizing it was for the sake of political aims concerning Serbia and Montenegro. She endured the subsequent grief with remarkable stoicism, later dedicating herself to raising their surviving sons during the hardships of exile, following Mirko's passing. An underexplored episode from 1916, amid the Austrian occupation of Montenegro, reveals Mirko's profound isolation during his confinement in Podgorica, cut off from his loved ones. Smuggled letters from that time convey his deep-seated loneliness, with desperate pleas for updates on Michael, Pavle, and Emmanuel, whom he described as "my only legacy," highlighting the poignant interplay between paternal love and the surrounding turmoil of war. These personal stories strip away the myth of untouchable royalty, portraying Mirko as a relatable individual wrestling with the paradoxes of affection, where the exhilaration of building a family clashed brutally against the devastation of irreversible loss. Those pranks hint at a second son resisting rigid court expectations. The preserved courtship letters demonstrate a literary talent inherited from his dynastic line, where authentic romantic sentiments intertwined seamlessly with obligations to his heritage. The harrowing Cannes episode not only illustrates the depths of his fatherly despair, but also suggests it may have triggered lingering depressive tendencies, subtly shaping his subsequent choices in politics and personal life. Natalia's candid admission about the marriage's political underpinnings sheds light on the era's gender imbalances in aristocratic alliances, where women frequently relinquished personal agency for broader national interests, adding nuance to her role as both partner and political pawn. The 1916 confinement correspondence further unveils his raw vulnerability, amplifying themes of enforced solitude and acute concern over perpetuating his bloodline amidst geopolitical instability. Collectively, these details craft a multifaceted portrait of Mirko, a charismatic yet deeply troubled soul, whose experiences encapsulated the universal human struggles between aspiration and adversity, joy and profound heartache, controversies and historical debates. Controversies enveloped Mirko Petrovic-Njegos like the dense mist shrouding Montenegro's Black Mountains, casting long shadows over his reputation and actions. His association with the Black Hand stood out as the most incendiary issue, this secretive society notorious for orchestrating the 1914 assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand that ignited World War I, entangled him in a labyrinth of conspiracy and nationalism. Historians remain divided on his role. Proponents argue he embodied a passionate patriot striving to consolidate Serb territories and fulfill pan-Slavic ideals, while detractors label him a reckless radical whose affiliations endorsed terrorism, contributing to the cataclysmic global conflict that claimed millions of lives. Within Montenegro, accusations of disloyalty surfaced, with some historical narratives proposing that his relocation to Vienna during the war involved clandestine negotiations with Austrian authorities, potentially undermining his family's allegiance to the Allies and straining ties with his father, King Nicholas. Assessments of his character were harsh in certain quarters. Contemporary sources occasionally portrayed him as a man of poor overall character, susceptible to dubious plots and personal indulgences that eroded trust. The divorce from Natalia further inflamed scandals in the rigidly conservative Orthodox community, where such separations were exceedingly rare, with public opinion oscillating between faulting Mirko's apparent instability and impulsiveness, and attributing the breakdown to Natalia's emotional retreat amid prolonged grief. Defenders among royal sympathizers frame him as a tragic figure ensnared by uncontrollable events, whereas critics view him as an inherently opportunistic individual exploiting turbulent times. Nevertheless, a balanced examination uncovers a man navigated by the era's relentless forces, where his decisions mirrored the broader Balkan chaos rather than stemming purely from personal defects. Debate centers on scope, sympathy with the cause versus operational responsibility. Scholars continue to argue whether this stemmed from genuine ideological commitment, rooted in his thwarted Serbian succession dreams via Natalia's lineage, or from self-serving motives amid Montenegro's precarious position. Allegations of treason during his Vienna sojourn, suggesting backdoor deals for Montenegro's semi-independent status under Austrian oversight, originated partly from wartime rumors and propaganda, yet they exacerbated familial divisions, as King Nicholas steadfastly supported the Entente powers against the Central Empires. Critiques of his character often draw from partisan accounts, potentially skewed by political biases, but the 1917 divorce undeniably violated Orthodox marital sanctity, revealing underlying hypocrisies in royal and societal expectations around duty and fidelity. In essence, these ongoing disputes position Mirko as a quintessential representation of the Balkans' intricate dilemmas, where fervent patriotism frequently veered into dangerous extremism, and individual shortcomings were magnified by the immense pressures of historical upheaval, from territorial ambitions to the devastation of war. Consequences and legacy. The immediate aftermath of Mirko's death thrust his 10-year-old son, Prince Michael, into the spotlight as the presumptive heir, nurtured in Paris by Natalia, alongside the scattered remnants of the Montenegrin royal circle. By 1921, following King Nicholas's passing and Crown Prince Danilo's swift abdication, the 13-year-old Michael stepped up as the nominal head of the Petrovic-Njegos dynasty, embodying a symbolic boy king under a fragile regency that preserved the family's claim amid exile. On a wider scale, these events rippled through the 20th century, contributing to Montenegro's forced integration into the newly formed Yugoslavia in 1918, a merger facilitated by the dynasty's eroded power and internal divisions. Mirko's thwarted ambitions for the Serbian throne exposed the inherent vulnerabilities in Balkan alliances, where dynastic dreams often crumbled under external pressures. Culturally, his narrative starkly illustrates nationalism's human toll. The Black Hand's aggressive pursuits, which Mirko supported, ultimately fueled conflicts that reshaped borders through devastating wars, raising critical questions about the true cost of such fervor. In contemporary reflections, Mirko's life serves as a cautionary tale on the dangers of unbridled ambition and how profound grief can dismantle even the mightiest figures. Remarkably, his bloodline persists today via his son, Prince Nicholas, the current head of the house, who actively champions Montenegrin cultural heritage as a pretender to the throne. In our divided world, Mirko's saga highlights unity's perilous duality, capable of inspiring greatness, yet prone to destruction, while emphasizing the unbreakable resilience of familial ties. In Exile, Michael kept the claim symbolically alive and reframed it as cultural memory. The 1918 absorption not only diminished Petrovic-Njegos' authority, but also sowed seeds for interwar regional instabilities, as weakened leadership invited foreign dominations. Mirko's experiences continue to inform today's dialogues on nationalism's pitfalls, evident in the echoes of 1990s Balkan wars, where similar ethnic drives led to tragedy. Through Prince Nicola's dedicated efforts in preserving traditions, like promoting Montenegrin literature and history, Mirko's story remains a living lesson in perseverance, demonstrating how personal and political losses can forge paths of cultural endurance. Mirko's story does not end with a throne, it ends with a lesson. In the Balkans, unity could inspire and destroy. For Mirko, the public fight for a bigger future met the private limits of a human heart. If this journey added a new layer to your view of that era, share it with someone who loves history and tell me what you think below.